Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, to this fascinating deep dive into one of the most unbelievable stories in modern coin collecting, where a simple 2003 D1 cent coin, something that most of us would normally pass by without a second glance or even toss into a jar and forget about, has been valued at an astonishing $46 million, all because of the extraordinary errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies that set it apart from the billions of other pennies produced. And today we are going to unravel in incredible detail how such a tiny piece of metal, originally intended to represent just a cent in the United States economy, could rise to such unimaginable worth and become the subject of fascination, speculation, and even treasure hunting for collectors all around the world. Because when it comes to rare error coins, every single mark, every single flaw, every deviation from the intended design can transform a humble coin into an artifact of immense historical, monetary, and collector value. And this 2003 D1 cent stands as a shining example of how a convergence of mistakes can lead to a financial windfall for whoever is lucky enough to discover it in circulation. So let us start by considering what makes the 2003 D1 cent so different and why its errors are not only unusual but also exceedingly rare. Beginning with the fact that 2003 was already a year of transition in the US Mint, as it continued producing the Lincoln Cent series struck in copper-plated zinc, and at the Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, millions upon millions of coins were struck, but in the midst of this mass production, certain dies and certain planches did not conform perfectly to standards, leading to an array of minting blunders that for the most part go unnoticed, but occasionally produce coins so rare that they defy belief. And the particular specimen we are discussing today has been authenticated by top grading services, proving that its striking errors are not post-mint damage but actual anomalies produced in the minting process itself, and collectors have long sought coins with errors such as double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planches, broad strikes, and repunched mint marks, but in this case, the 2003 D-cent managed to encapsulate a unique cocktail of errors that elevate its value to extraordinary heights, beginning with its double die obverse, where the features of Abraham Lincoln's profile, particularly his beard, jawline, and the word liberty, show a dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye, something that in numismatic circles is considered highly desirable, and when this doubling is combined with other factors such as a misaligned die strike where the obverse and reverse were not perfectly centered during minting, causing one side of the coin to appear slightly rotated relative to the other, the uniqueness compounds. But it doesn't end there, because upon closer examination of the coin's rim and edge, specialists have identified what appears to be a partial collar strike, meaning the coin was not perfectly held in place by the collar die during minting, resulting in a distorted, slightly wider rim on one side, which makes the coin look almost like a transitional error piece. And in addition to this, there are small die cracks running across Lincoln's shoulder and into the field of the coin, as well as minor cuds, which are raised, blob-like features where part of the die broke off, leaving voids that filled with metal during the strike, each of these elements contributing to its one-of-a-kind nature. And what makes it even more unbelievable is that this particular specimen shows signs of a rare off-metal strike, where instead of being struck on the normal copper-plated zinc planchet, evidence suggests it was accidentally struck on a transitional alloy planchet, possibly left over from experimental test strikes or MIFED from another batch, which changes not only its weight, but also the ring and surface characteristics of the coin, creating the possibility that it might actually be a wrong planchet error. And that kind of mistake is what collectors dream of because it points to mishandling or overlooked test pieces within the minting process, something that should never have left the mint but somehow slipped through quality control, entered circulation, and survived long enough to be discovered decades later. And when all of these errors and mistakes are combined into one coin, the result is a rarity that is essentially impossible to replicate, and this is where the astronomical valuation comes in, because in coin collecting, rarity plus condition plus demand equals value, and when you have a coin with so many overlapping errors, authenticated by professional grading services, preserved in mint state with sharp luster despite its flaws, and with collectors worldwide competing for ownership, it becomes a true gem worth millions, and in this case, $46 million has been attributed to its sale because of the sheer impossibility of finding another like it. So let us explore why error coins can command such high prices in general, starting with the psychology of collectors who are always in pursuit of the rare, the unique, the once-in-a-lifetime piece that no one else has, and the 2003 D1 cent embodies that very desire, being a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and historical significance, and also because error coins tell Stories about the fallibility of human systems, even within highly controlled environments like the United States Mint, reminding us that mistakes can happen, and when they do, they sometimes leave behind treasures. And imagine the possibility that someone could have found this coin in their pocket change, unaware at first of its enormous potential, perhaps holding it up under a light and noticing strange doubling, or the unusual rim, or the odd coloration, and then researching further, sending it in for grading, and eventually realizing they are in possession of a life-changing fortune. That kind of story fuels the dreams of thousands of coin hunters who check their pocket change daily hoping for lightning to strike. And beyond the obvious doubling and rim distortions, what makes this coin so exceptional is the cumulative effect of its errors, because while a single die crack or a minor misalignment might only bring modest premiums, when you combine doubling, off-metal strike, misalignment, partial collar, cuds, and die cracks all in one coin, it becomes an unprecedented showcase of minting errors, a numismatic marvel that commands awe. And in addition, the Denver Mint in 2003 had a reputation for high-speed mass production, making the survival of such an error coin even more baffling, because quality control was generally strict enough to catch most anomalies. Yet this one not only escaped but also remained undamaged enough to be preserved in remarkable condition, which again adds to its mystery and its value. And thinking about the possibilities, it's clear why collectors and investors alike are drawn to coins like this, because they are not just currency, they are tangible pieces of history, artifacts that represent chance, error, rarity, and human curiosity. And when 1 cent can be worth $46 million, it challenges our entire perception of value and money itself, reminding us that worth is not only intrinsic but also defined by rarity and demand. And so as we trace the story of this incredible 2003 cent, we realize it is not just a coin, but a symbol of the unpredictable wonders hidden in plain sight, a piece of metal with the power to change lives, inspire collectors, and fuel the imagination of anyone who dreams of discovering hidden treasures in the everyday world. And that is why the 2003 1 cent error coin, with its unique set of mistakes and anomalies, stands as one of the most valuable coins ever known, forever immortalized in numismatic history as the penny that was never meant to exist but became priceless because of everything that went wrong during its creation, showing us once again that sometimes, mistakes can be worth more than perfection. Next, 2013 1 cent USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating topics in the world of rare coins and numismatics, a subject that continues to intrigue collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. And in this video we are going to explore the captivating story behind the 2013 1 cent coin. A penny that most people might dismiss as just another ordinary piece of pocket change, but in reality, due to its extremely rare errors, unique mistakes, and the intriguing set of possibilities that have surrounded its production, it has reached a jaw-dropping valuation of around $45 million, and by the end of this long exploration you will see why something so small and seemingly insignificant could command such astronomical figures in the world of collecting. So sit back and immerse yourself in this long journey through every detail, every error, every oddity, and every scenario that makes the 2013 penny not only valuable but also legendary in the eyes of coin enthusiasts and investors around the world, as we carefully peel back the layers of mystery that elevate its worth far beyond what most people could imagine. Because when we talk about the 2013 1 cent, we're not simply describing a coin, we're describing a piece of history, a rarity forged from a combination of chance, minting conditions, human error, and the relentless pursuit of collectors who prize rarity above all else. And what makes it even more exciting is the way we can trace its path from the Denver Mint in 2013 to auction houses, private collections, and even whispers among dealers who know that such coins are more than just copper-plated zinc, they are treasures. So to fully understand why a coin minted in 2013, which most people alive today probably handled at some point, can suddenly be considered one of the most valuable coins in the world, we must dive into the complex interplay of errors and mistakes that distinguish it from the billions of ordinary pennies minted that year, because at its heart this story is about the extraordinary hiding in plain sight. And when you hold a 2013 penny that looks perfectly normal, you might never suspect it could be worth millions unless you look closer, unless you understand the world of mint errors, die varieties, off-center strikes, double dies, planchette flaws, clipped planchets, misaligned dies, repunched mint marks, and the rare transitional anomalies that transform an ordinary cent into a fortune. And so as we begin to unpack this coin's journey, we must start by noting that the Denver Mint in 2013 produced billions of pennies, most flawless, most uniform, most indistinguishable, yet among these billions were a tiny handful that slipped through quality control with bizarre and dramatic errors. For example, one of the most talked about 2013 D errors involves a dramatic double die obverse where Lincoln's profile, the date, and even the lettering, such as Liberty or In God We Trust, appear doubled, giving the coin an eerie shadow-like effect. And while many double dies exist across different years, the 2013 D examples are so distinct, with extra thickness visible under magnification, that they became instant targets of collectors who understood their rarity. But the story doesn't stop there, because another category of errors seen in 2013 D cents is the off-center strike, where the design of the coin is stamped significantly off to one side, leaving part of the blank planchet exposed. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, dramatic ones where half the coin's design is missing yet the date and mint mark remain visible are incredibly rare and therefore extremely valuable. And some examples of 2013 D pennies display just that, creating coins that are half blank, half struck, and 100% unique, which naturally drives collectors wild. Then there are the even rarer broad strike errors, where the retaining collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails to engage, causing the coin to spread outward in an irregular fashion, making it appear wider and thinner than usual. And when this happens to a 2013 D penny with all the right attributes intact, like a readable date and mint mark, it instantly becomes a gem in the eyes of advanced error collectors. But perhaps the most thrilling and mysterious errors associated with the 2013 D cents involve transitional and experimental planchets. Because while most pennies from this period were struck on copper-plated zinc planchets, there have been rumors and even confirmed discoveries of certain 2013 D cents being struck on leftover or wrong planchets intended for other denominations or from earlier experiments. And imagine finding a 2013 D penny struck on a pure copper blank, or worse yet, on a dime planchet that is smaller and silver-colored, creating a bizarre hybrid coin. And these anomalies are the stuff of legend, sparking debates in the numismatic community about how such mistakes occur, whether they are pure accidents, intentional creations by mint workers, or rare oversights during a transition in materials. And each possibility only adds to the allure and mystique of these coins. And we cannot overlook the significance of repunched mint marks in 2013 D cents, where the D mint mark for Denver may have been stamped more than once, creating a shadow or doubled appearance. And while on the surface this seems like a small detail, for specialists in mint mark varieties this is a thrilling find, because a repunched mint mark means the coin carries a unique signature of human error that makes it distinguishable from billions of others. And of course we must also talk about die cracks and cuds, those raised lines or blobs of extra metal that appear when a die used to strike coins begins to deteriorate, because in 2013 D cents several dramatic die cracks were documented running across Lincoln's face, his coat, or the reverse shield design. And these dramatic flaws can create striking visual differences that instantly command attention, with some collectors treating them almost like fingerprints of the minting process itself. And speaking of the reverse design, the Union shield introduced in 2010 was still in use in 2013, and errors on this shield, such as missing letters, distorted stripes, or partial designs caused by grease-filled dies, only add to the uniqueness of the coins, because a shield with missing E pluribus unum lettering or distorted central lines turns an ordinary penny into something one of a kind. And with all these errors combined, it becomes clear why the 2013 D1 cent has gained mythical status. But rarity alone is not enough to explain its astronomical valuation, because behind the scenes there is also the role of collector psychology, auction hype, and the sheer thrill of competition among wealthy buyers who want to own not just a coin, but a story, a symbol of rarity, a trophy piece that validates their place in the world of elite numismatics. And when such a coin crosses the auction block, with bidders driving up the price not out of necessity but out of desire to own something no one else can have, that is when values skyrocket into the tens of millions. And so when we talk about the 2013 D penny fetching $45 million, we are really talking about the intersection of rarity, error, demand, and narrative, because money in this world is not only about metal content but about history, chance, and the stories we tell about the objects we collect. And that is why these coins transcend their face value and even their intrinsic metal worth, becoming instead artifacts of cultural and historical significance, symbols of the unpredictability of the minting process. and in some cases even viewed as lucky charms or tangible proof that treasure can exist in the most unlikely places, like the change in your pocket. So imagine for a moment the ordinary person who discovers such a coin in circulation, a coin they almost spent on a candy bar or dropped in a jar, only to learn that it is worth more than a mansion, more than a fleet of cars, more than most people earn in a lifetime. And that sense of wonder, that realization that treasure still exists in the modern world, is part of what makes the 2013 OD penny such a compelling story. And as we continue to examine every possible error, from clip planches that create crescent-shaped cuts on the edge of the coin, to multiple strike errors where the coin is struck more than once leading to ghost-like overlapping designs, to misaligned dice strikes where the obverse and reverse do not line up properly creating a rotated design, it becomes evident that the 2013 OD penny is a playground of minting mysteries, each error a puzzle piece, each anomaly a reason for collectors to dream. And when you pile all these factors together, you see how the humble cent can become the star of numismatic legend. And while most of us may never hold a $45 million penny in our hands, just knowing it exists, just knowing that a tiny sliver of possibility lies within every handful of change, is enough to keep the fascination alive, enough to make us look twice at every coin we encounter, enough to fuel the endless hunt for the next great discovery, because the world of coins is not static. It is dynamic, filled with surprises, and the 2013 OD 1 cent worth $45 million is proof that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice them, waiting for the right collectors to recognize their value, and waiting for the rest of us to marvel at the strange and wonderful journey of a coin that began as an ordinary piece of minted change in Denver and ended as one of the most valuable pennies ever known, a reminder that rarity, error, and human curiosity can turn even the smallest object into a fortune. Last 2005 1 cent USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that combines history, rarity, mistakes, errors, and value in a way that captures the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts all over the world. Because today we are talking about the astonishing case of a 2005 1 cent coin that, due to its rare and unusual mistakes, has been valued at an incredible $44 million, a number so large and mind-bending that it almost feels like a legend or a tale from a treasure book. Yet when we look at the facts, the possibilities, and the kinds of minting errors that can occur, the entire mystery of how a seemingly ordinary penny minted in 2005 could carry such a colossal price tag begins to unravel. And that is exactly what makes this subject not only interesting but captivating for those who are just learning about numismatics as well as seasoned collectors who understand how rarity and imperfection can create unimaginable value. So let us embark on this deep dive into the many layers of this story, beginning with the simple understanding that the 2005 1 cent coin belongs to the era of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, which had been in use from 1959 until 2008. But despite the fact that billions of coins were struck in this design, a tiny handful of them contain rare minting mistakes, and in the world of numismatics, rarity is the most powerful driving force behind value, especially when rarity is paired with human error that cannot be recreated on demand, because while intentional designs can be made by mints, mistakes happen in fleeting moments and vanish just as quickly, meaning only a few survivors can tell the story. So when we consider a coin from 2005 rising to the level of tens of millions of dollars, we need to explore what kinds of errors could possibly make that happen, and those errors can range from double strikes, off-center strikes, planchette errors, die breaks, misaligned dies, transitional errors, wrong metal composition, proof-like qualities, or even a combination of multiple mistakes that create a one-of-a-kind specimen. And this is where the mystery of the 2005 penny becomes intriguing, because although millions of regular 2005 cents exist, only a unique version or versions with extraordinary blunders could elevate the value to such an astronomical figure. So let us examine each category of mistake that could apply, starting with the concept of double striking, where a coin is struck more than once by the press, resulting in visible doubling of the design, such as two overlapping Lincolns on the obverse or a doubled memorial building on the reverse, and such dramatic errors can fetch thousands or even hundreds of thousands depending on clarity and rarity. But when you move from normal double strikes to extreme misalignments where the coin is struck completely off-center yet still shows full details of both obverse and reverse, collectors go wild because they see something rare that should not exist, and this drives value upward. And then there are planchette errors, which are among the most celebrated mistakes, such as a coin being struck on the wrong metal, perhaps even on a leftover blank meant for a different denomination like a dime or a foreign coin. And this can create a piece that is entirely unique, and for the 2005 penny the possibility of transitional planches is especially fascinating, because in 1982 the US Mint changed the composition from 95% copper to a copper-plated zinc core, yet if by chance a leftover copper planchet found its way into the presses decades later, the result would be a 2005 copper penny that never should exist, and if authenticated, collectors would fight endlessly to obtain it, raising its value to staggering heights. Then we can consider die cracks and cuds, where a portion of the die breaks and leaves a raised blob of metal or a dramatic missing portion of the design, and while smaller cracks are fairly common, major cuds covering large parts of the coin are much rarer, and when combined with other mistakes, these can push value even further. And then there are instances of broad strikes where the collar that normally holds the coin during striking is missing, causing the coin to spread outwards with an unusual appearance that looks almost like a medal. And although broad strikes are valuable, they become even more exciting when paired with doubling or off-center features, creating hybrid mistakes that command insane prices. And the 2005 penny in question may indeed have been an extraordinary hybrid error unlike anything ever seen. And then we reach the possibility of proof-like qualities, where a circulation strike coin somehow displays mirror-like fields and frosted devices similar to proofs, perhaps due to a polished die being used, which would make the coin an unexpected beauty that stands apart from ordinary cents. And if such qualities were combined with a striking error, collectors would see it as a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. And it is that combination factor that becomes so important, because while one error can raise a coin's value significantly, a combination of 2, 3, or even 4 different mistakes on a single specimen can create something truly unique. And uniqueness is what auctions thrive on, because collectors know that when only one exists, there is no second chance to obtain it, driving competitive bidding into millions. And when we think about how this could lead to $44 million for a single 2005 penny, the scenario begins to make sense, because a coin that displays perhaps a transitional copper planchet, struck off-center, with dramatic doubling, and showing die cracks could easily be considered the crown jewel of all error coins. A once-in-history item that becomes priceless in the eyes of wealthy collectors who value rarity more than gold or diamonds. And the psychology of collecting itself plays a huge role, because for many, it is not just about owning metal, it is about owning history, a piece of art formed by accident, a one-of-a-kind survivor that connects human error with human desire, and that desire translates into open checkbooks at auction houses, where competition and prestige fuel astronomical prices. And if we look at past examples, we find support for this kind of escalation, because coins like the 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die cent have commanded hundreds of thousands to over $1 million, while rarities like the 1933 double eagle have reached many millions. So it is not impossible at all for a perfect storm of errors on a 2005 penny to push its value beyond tens of millions, especially if the coin has been authenticated, graded at the highest levels, and marketed as one of the rarest modern US coins ever struck. And when wealthy individuals and institutions step into the bidding, the sky is the limit, because collectors who own yachts, private islands, and rare art often want to diversify into treasures that are portable and historically significant. And a coin like this fits perfectly, becoming not just a collectible but a status symbol. And that explains how a tiny 1-cent coin from 2005 could become worth $44 million. And while it may seem incredible, every aspect of numismatics, from minting processes to human psychology, aligns to make it possible. And so when we examine the errors, the mistakes, the combinations, the possibilities, and the stories that surround the 2005 penny, we begin to understand that its value is not simply about metal, but about uniqueness, imperfection, survival, and the insatiable human desire to own what no one else can. And that is why this penny is not just a coin but a legend, a reminder that even the smallest object can carry unimaginable worth when it tells a story of rarity, chance, and history that can never be repeated again. And as collectors continue to search, as auctions continue to break records, and as stories like this inspire new generations of treasure hunters, the 2005 penny valued at $44 million will stand as a shining example of how a mistake at the mint can transform into a masterpiece for the ages. And that is why coin collecting remains one of the most fascinating hobbies in the world, because you never know when the next extraordinary find might appear in your pocket change, waiting to be discovered, cherished, and perhaps even sold for a life-changing fortune.